Welcome to Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jesse Ott, the host of this podcast, which is all about beverage innovation. I talk with innovation pioneers from agriculture to glass. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes.
I feel like there's a lot going on. I think I'm super excited, with just despite obviously everything else, with the, 200% tariffs and all that good stuff. But I just feel like with like innovation and just people like the industry being open to being like, yeah, we really need to like do something. So many different people like you guys, Caitlin, and what you're doing, and Erica. And
I can't breathe. We are like, the brand cultivator program is slammed.
That's amazing.
I want to hear about it.
Yeah.
We have to talk. I'm like, that is so brilliant, especially with just like how salespeople, it's like such a thankless job when you're working for a distributor and then they keep cutting back your pay. I'm like, why not just pick your best brands and,
now we're getting so many brands that we get a new brand cultivator and we have like 4 or 5 brands just to hand them. And it's like amazing because, in the beginning it was like one here, one there. And now all of a sudden we're just slammed. And it's like
portfolio. That's awesome.
We can give them all the
cool.
like so good. But my head is spinning, to be honest. But in a good way, obviously, right?
That's great.
Yeah,
That's awesome. There's room for everybody.
Yeah. Maybe we can sneak it in, Jesse, if there ends up being, I'm not going to be obtrusive about it, but if there ends up being a room to sneak it in, I'd love to.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's important because it's a trend.
Yeah.
It's what's happening. I mean, Green Glass Global, we used to have a new brand every week. It was really overwhelming that first year. And I mean, what people don't understand is they leave before 45 days expecting us to be able to manage a buyer in a year cycle in 45 days. It's like,
right.
These people don't understand the business.
No, they don't. But
so
the way that we're doing it, it's working. It's almost like the salespeople are teaching them.
Okay.
No, this is how it goes.
I hope they signed for like a year because you can't.
It's a month to month. There's no long-term commitment. And people are just every month. They're like, oh yeah. Oh, I need another state. Oh, do you have anybody here? Oh, okay. It's like, so I think the whole non-committal thing is great for the brands. They love it. They're just like.
People are having a ball working for themselves, making money, using their relationships. And yeah.
Both sides are just super stoked about it, and it's just going so well. So, but sign of the times, right? Like Julie, it's an innovative approach to sales,
and there's just more. I feel like, there's more people getting pieces of the pie, right? And the pie is huge, right? Despite the declines and whatever, like nobody still talks about the actual earnings, year after year. And it's like, no, we're, beverage alcohol is not dying. It's getting smarter, I think.
We're just doing it different.
All right, you guys ready? I'm going to intro you. Oh, we already started recording, by the way. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Thursdays. We have our Q1 roundtable review with my crew here. We did a year in review for 2024 and expectations for 2025, and we had so much fun. We decided to do this quarterly, which is really, really fun. We are kind of early in our analysis here. We only have 2 months of data, but a lot has happened, and we have a lot to talk about. So Erica, starting with you, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Erica Ducey, founder of Business of Drinks, and we are both a podcast and a drinks business consultancy. We help brands and government associations and anyone who's looking find insights to better market their products across wine, beer, spirits, THC drinks, and RTDs.
One thing I wanted to say, Erica, I just saw Sid Patel. He's been posting something about you've been awarded as a journalist in wine with a medal in Puckett. And did you not?
An award that I'm not aware of?
Yeah, I saw it today because I was looking for, he posted something about THC Oh, yeah, right here. Raising a glass to wine, media critics, writers, and voices of influence. You're right here. I'll show you.
Wonderful.
Congrats.
Happy to hear that.
Seriously.
Yeah, there you are. The same picture I have.
Oh, nice. Yes, I know. I thought that was like
Nice.
a woman, International Women's Day
Natalie
recognition.
McLean. Oh, and Erica.
So great.
That's awesome.
Aw.
And
Nice.
you're right here.
Oh, yay.
Yeah.
Woohoo. Happy to hear it.
Congratulations. That's seriously, that's really cool.
Thank
Jesse,
you.
where is that? Can you share it with us after so I
Yeah,
can share it with my
it's the
team too?
Sommelier's Choice Awards.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
through Beverage Trade
Awesome.
Network. Okay.
That's great.
Yeah. Sorry. Next,
No,
Kate.
that's great.
Kate.
Good morning. My name is Kate Jerkins. I am Chief Business Officer for Uncle Nearest Inc. And yeah, ready to get after it, guys.
Let's do this. Julie.
Hi, everyone. I'm Julie Milroy, founder of JM Advisory. I'm also a certified sommelier with the Code of Master Sommeliers. I have 20 years in wine and spirits industry, specialize in helping brands grow through smart distribution strategies. Recently, I've been diving into the AI and digital transformation front. I believe there's a lot of low-hanging fruit in the wine industry that we're just starting to tap into. And I'm excited to share insights on how wine can evolve and learn from other categories like beer. And I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yes. Caitlin.
Yes, Caitlin Lubell, founder and chief connection officer. Made that one up myself.
Like it.
Booze Biz.
Own it, girl. Own it.
Yeah. So Booze Biz, my partner Jennifer Meacham and I launched a recruiting agency strictly focused on beverage. So obviously wine, spirits, beer, but then we do booze free, and booze adjacent. So we work with clients that are PR agencies that focus in beverage or non-alc, functional beverages, THC, all the fun. We cover the US. Any roles anyone needs to hire, whether it's fractional or full-time, we can assist from sales, from C-suite to feet on the street sales to admins and HR. We do everything, and we're a small team, but we're all from the industry, which is what really sets us apart. We work the 3-tier system. We know the language. And yeah, we've been extremely busy lately, as you can all imagine.
That's great. That's awesome. And you started a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, we did the noisy launch July 2023. So we've been noisy for a year, about a year and a half now. Thankfully, because we all come from the industry, so we came in with a lot of first and second degree connections. So it's very fortunate and thankful that business has been amazing. We've had to pivot listening to the industry and listening to clients into a lot of fractional roles, but we're still doing direct hire as well. And yeah, it's
All right. All right. So I have prepared about 7 slides or so, and we're going to review it. And for those that aren't on YouTube, for the audio piece, I will try to talk through it as best I can so you can visualize what we're talking about, starting with the economy and kind of talking down to the brand level of what's working, what's not.
Mhm.
So I'm going to share my screen again. Right. So that looming question, right? Are we in a recession? We've been talking about it for a couple of years. So I did some research. I did some research, and the biggest economic indicators are GDP, unemployment rate, industrial production, consumer spending, leading economic index, yield curve, inversion, and stock market performance. And so far, what I can gather is that the biggest one is consumer spending, and it's a sustained decrease that can indicate a recession. And there is a decline in spending and foot traffic dropping 4.3% year on year in early March. So we kind of already know that, right? Dollar General is closing some stores. I know McDonald's is creating some more value meals. So we know that consumer meals or consumer spending is down. When eggs are $8 for a 12 pack, we're not we're kind of a luxury item, right? We're a luxury industry. You don't need it to live. You do it because it's fun or you enjoy it. So these are things that we need to watch and be aware of. But I don't think they're there. I'm not an economist. I'm sure economists use like 30 points that could point to something different. But as of this podcast, I feel pretty strongly because the economy is strong and unemployment is low, and that's really good. What I talked about last time is consumer debt. This is not good. So as of the fourth quarter in 2024, household debt reached 18 trillion. That's a 93 billion increase from Q3, which is only 0.5%. But half of that is in credit card debt, and that is not good. Average household credit card debt exceeded 10,000 when adjusted for inflation, a level that hasn't been seen since 2009, which is not good. There's more home equity loans being taken out, which there was a 17-year decline. But the balance of that piece, right, is the stock market. We're increasing our wealth if you have invested into the stock market, which maybe it's auto-correcting, maybe it's just uneasy, probably wants to throw up like we do every other day because we don't really know what's going to happen, right? Like, it's just like make a decision already and just move on with it. But hopefully it's a negotiation tactic that he's using that it results in something good down the line. That's the hope. When you look at mortgage debt increases, auto loans and student loans, I find that debt to be positive. People are buying homes, autos, and going to school. So, for me, it's that credit card debt that's concerning. And I know that we had talked about that last time because the more debt you get into, the less you can afford to do anything when you're, have all those big credit card payments and the interest rates are not low. So shifting over to our category, which, I know, Erica, you're in the wine piece of it too, and Julie, but this is more spirits focused, I guess, for this particular review that I prepared for. Not that we can't talk about wine. Sip Source, I think.
You just add 5 points to it.
Add 5 points. All right.
-5, yeah.
-5. Okay. Sip Source. So I thought this was really important because I'm a data person and they're using predictive analytics and they have a 90% accuracy predicting Q4 of 2024 depletion rates. I think this is important to note because we're all going to be using predictive analytics. My company is going to be using predictive analytics. And I think it's extremely important, as well as they're looking at the category overall to be down 4% and by 4.32 by the end of 2025. They look at category stabilization for rum, US whiskey, and vodka, and a slow to near flat growth for tequila and agave spirits. But this does not include any external factors and tariffs that could affect this. This is just as is right now. Does anybody have anything they want to talk about or comment on or anything? Or should I just plow through this?
I just think that that's all going to be messy like the up and down on the tariffs right now makes this wholly unpredictable right now.
Yeah. Moving
for everybody.
A moving target. Yeah.
It really is. It really is.
So on the positive piece, we do have categories that are growing like crazy, and it hasn't really changed, right? So we know the cannabis, THC, CBD is growing. The global market is growing 1.16 billion in 23 and expected to grow 19% from 24 to 30. The US is expected to be at 1.4 billion in 25. TDs are projected to reach 142 billion by 2029. That low cal and functional that we talked about, Erica, in our last review is 30 billion by 29. So we're going to see a lot of increase on that category as well. Then, of course, the NA Bev space, which we've seen in beer, we've seen, with athletic brewing, really kind of plowing that space wide open in the last few years. That is expected to grow to 600 from 24 to almost 829. So, NA beers, 35 billion of that. So, there's a lot of really good things that are happening out there. And it makes you wonder, if we didn't have these categories, where the category would be, would we have not maybe changed our habits? We'd still be drinking the same thing? I don't know. It's a lot more fun now, but I know it's a lot more challenging, especially for the established brands, to keep that their momentum going. And then I just had some newsworthy articles and announcements that I wanted to talk about that I thought were key. Here's one wine note. California wine supply drops to 24%, the lowest in 20 years. A lot of that is because they got burnt down, right? There's just they don't have the vines. Then weather and weather damage. You got Diageo that just announced they're halting new investments through Distill Ventures Accelerator program. That's huge.
Yeah.
Poppy being sold to PepsiCo for $1.95 billion. Pepsi apparently did their own study to create their own brand, and it didn't have the legs to do what they wanted it to do. So they decided to buy another company, and they decided to buy Poppy.
This is a holy cow at my house. We have 3 kids, and they range in age from 8 to 17. And we fly through Poppy at our house. Everyone has their favorite flavors, and it's so brilliant. Everyone's so stoked. Like, they're just like, it's such an incredible story too. Just an incredible story. They even sell merch at Target, and they sold out of their Poppy merch at Target. Like, it's hysterical.
Really?
They are. Yeah, my daughter wears her hot pink Poppy sweatshirt. Like, all of them are so into it. It's so funny.
Yeah. So it was like, I didn't realize it was the soda, like the full pink.
Yeah. They've created a cult following, and Pepsi's brilliant for doing this. Good on them.
Yeah. Well, I think they know they have to play in the space to survive, because our administration is talking down on soda. So they're going to have to find
Correct. Yeah.
alternative beverage. But Kate, to your point, I don't know that much. I tried to interview them a couple years ago, but they were just too busy. But is your children's age, or is that their target market?
I assume so. I think their target is moms, right, to buy it.
Okay.
Like, I think they really want us to know that it's healthy. And so you read the ingredients, it's prebiotics, it's, the flavors, they make them as close. So, like, my daughter loves the lemon lime. It tastes enough like a 7-Up or kind of Sprite type, and they taste good enough, and they are fun for them, and it makes them feel like, I don't know, they just feel fun. They're really bright colored cans as well. They've just done an incredible job. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely for me, it's kids. It's become like the acceptable sodas to put in a cooler and bring for after a game, or, kids are coming over and you're serving pizza, and you can put out all these fun flavors of Poppy. And they make it easy. They sell tons of variety packs. They've partnered up with Costco. They have 2 separate types of variety packs, and they just made it really easy for all of us to try it and to get our kids indoctrinated with it. It's a story. It's 2 parents. It's parents. They were they were pregnant and started this business, and it's brilliant. In my opinion, they've just, everything they've done with it, the marketing too. It's all TikTok and viral and all the things,
Sounds like they made it kind of like a lifestyle brand.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm not that in the loop about it, but I definitely feel like it's become like a lifestyle brand. Especially, I didn't even know they were doing branded clothing and things
Oh
like
yeah,
that.
they did
There you
hats
go.
and they did hats, sweatshirts, t-shirts, everything at Target. My daughter thought, she's like, oh my gosh, and then my boys were upset because they were like in the girls section. They're like, where's the boys? Like, everyone wanted their merch. So. But to your point, I don't know if you have young children or not, but I was talking to a colleague yesterday who doesn't have, she's older, she doesn't have young kids anymore. She's like, I've never heard of this brand. So you can tell the target really is like families, moms, young kids, because it is such a clean alternative to soda. And they've made it fun. They finally made it fun.
That's great.
What'll be interesting, Kate, is if when, it gets within the PepsiCo distribution line, if they're going to be putting them in fountains in restaurants.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Son last night said, I just hope they don't change anything. And I said, no, I actually think they have to. But at the same time, Poppy is everything Pepsi doesn't have the ability to do. And it's working really well. If anything, I'm like, you're going to see it everywhere now, where, like, we go to Angel City Football Club games in LA, like, maybe that's a Pepsi stadium. So by next year, maybe we can buy Poppy there instead of a Starry or a Diet Pepsi or whatever it is, so that I think the distribution will for sure be really interesting.
Yeah, that'll be great. Well, Erica, I did see that Poppy was on Shark Tank, much like Beatbox. And so I find it interesting that, two of the brands making waves are brands that actually were on Shark Tank. And I'm just curious, if that had some kind of effect behind it. Because I do know that Poppy has a couple of actresses and artists that are backing them. And then you've got Beatbox investor and spokesman, now Shaquille O'Neal, which is brilliant. I mean,
Really? I didn't realize that. I just saw that there. Wow.
just happened. It literally, I think it just happened this week. It's like really recent. And they've got his name on bottles, on the Tetra Paks.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very smart for emerging brands to go on Shark Tank, not because they may even come out with a deal. Like Little Saints, for example.
I was about to say, yeah.
Megan went on there. She didn't come out with a deal, but it was fantastic for brand exposure.
Yeah.
So I think being on Shark Tank, like any brand that has the opportunity to do that, and that has a sustainable or a fairly good business model, should go on Shark Tank just because of that audience reach. And I think that's what something like the Shaquille O'Neal relationship with Beatbox does is, they are probably saying like, hey, we are not reaching a broad enough audience. How can we do this at scale without taking out, Super Bowl ads or whatever? Like, what is going to be a more kind of longer term sustainable relationship? Probably, I don't know. I hadn't even heard about the Shaquille O'Neal involvement with Beatbox, but I'm imagining now that he is probably an investor, right? So I think like that type of involvement of getting people who have huge social media followings and or exposure on major broadcast networks, that sort of thing, is really a smart path forward for a lot of brands who can incorporate that into their models.
For sure. LVMH bought a stake in French Bloom, which is a 0% sparkling, Diageo with Ritual, and it's a thing. And then you have these big. Go ahead.
Mianetto, they launched a non-alc Mianetto and a non-alc Aperol that are both out in the market, and they're the top importing sparkling wine outside of champagne company, but they're super innovative. I love the company, and yeah, they're rolling out their non-alc booze-free versions as well.
Yeah. Well, and then you have these other beverage companies that haven't really played in our space. They're now launching cocktails. So you've got Minute Maid, which is a wine-based cocktail, and you've got Kraft Heinz coming out with Crystal Light cocktails. Have you guys seen these?
Nope.
I think it's very smart. It's very smart of them because of the nostalgia factor. I think that right now is a challenging time for a lot of people for various reasons, financial reasons and so forth, political reasons. But I think tapping into familiarity and nostalgia with bringing these brands to the marketplace for adults who really enjoyed them when they were young is very smart strategy. I'm only surprised that it took this long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd be curious about some of the labeling requirements, right? Because if you think of Minute Maid, that's always been targeted towards kids. I think the last time I got it was when I was a kid, or I, bought it for my son because I remembered having it. But I do see a huge trend, and I think it's been slowly progressing, but now at a quicker pace of CPG really getting into the beverage alcohol space, right? I mean, we saw it with Pepsi, and, they haven't really acted on it, but they did create a division for alcohol. And I think we're going to see more and more of it. And, the only thing that I would add to the newsworthy is the recent news of Tito's and Brown-Forman leaving their traditional beverage alcohol distributors in California to join a beer distributor, Reyes, right? So I think we're seeing a lot more of the crossover, and just with some different companies that I've been talking with, there's a lot of interest right now as the wine and spirits kind of distribution space is getting disrupted by beer, that I think we're going to see more of it, and it's going to really come out of nowhere. I feel like.
It's interesting. I would say I totally agree on that. I would just say
Me
as a
too.
parent, I just need to go. I think the Minute Maid stuff, the Sunny D and vodka, I find it all very problematic. I mean, I know that they feel the need to get into it, but there's this, for me, like almost a glorification of alcohol when you do that. My kid's favorite juice is now going to be with vodka. I mean, we don't drink, sorry, no offense to Minute Maid. We don't drink Minute Maid at our house, but I'm just saying in general, right? Or like, the Sunny Delight and vodka, like, I find that all to be really challenging because I live in California where you can buy booze everywhere, right? So in certain places where it's a liquor controlled state and you're only seeing that in the liquor store, that's one thing. But you're walking through the gas station or a 7-Eleven or the grocery store, you're seeing the juice aisle is right behind the liquor aisle. I don't know. It just feels, I have a conflict. There's a conflict there for me.
Well, that's really the thing that surprises me, because when you look at like wine labeling laws and liquor labeling laws, they're so specific. Like you can't have, I remember we had a wine that had like somewhat, of a naked body or a body part, and then it couldn't go through. But all of a sudden, you've got kids brands being portrayed, being kind of rebranded with alcohol. So it'd be interesting, Jesse. You should get an attorney on here. Know a good one, Ryan Malkin,
Yeah,
who specializes in beverage alcohol. Well, yeah, you know them.
yeah, he's
But it's also
coming.
it's the THC of it all too, right? To make sure that the gummies, the weed gummies and stuff
Kids
don't look exciting.
Right. And like the
Kids
cereal.
love a gummy, y'all. Like if you don't make those look scary, they will grab any gummy they
Yeah. And apparently adults do too.
Yep.
But I think that's like worth a whole conversation. And how are they getting through it, right? Is it because there are these huge known reputable organizations that are able to just like push them out? But yeah, it'd be interesting to learn.
Probably.
I think of when my first thoughts were with this Minute Maid and Crystal Light is what does that distribution look like? Are they able to utilize that same distribution network, or did they have to go adjacent, and then where do you merchandise that? You can't put them together in the same spot, right? And if it's wine, do you put it in the wine cooler? I guess, right? Like I haven't seen it in a store yet, so I'm just curious as to how they're putting these. And to your point, Kate, too, about being like a 7-Eleven or something, that could be really tricky. So hopefully they're maybe decreasing that Minute Maid brand name and making it more of a cocktail.
Yeah.
It'll
be interesting.
Yeah, you can just add Crystal Light and it's got like dried tequila or something. You just add it to your water.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, that would
That's
be
a whole thing right there. Wow. Dry tequila in there. I like it.
Yeah, dried tequila, like dried alcohol that dissolves.
Without alcohol or something.
So
the world is kind of getting on us, right? About all the negativity surrounded by alcohol. Yet these major CPG companies are like, wait for us. We want in. And it's like, wait, I thought we were evil Satan over here that causes cancer and kills people. And now, these major corporations, they want in our world.
Just wait till they add alcohol to Hawaiian Punch. I mean,
it's coming.
Well, so many of the products that are alcohol are already Hawaiian Punch. Like those are some of the best performing RTDs right now. Are the Hawaiian Punch
they just have to put a new label on it.
Yeah,
and get the rights
exactly.
to the label.
But Caitlin, I agree with you. It feels counterintuitive. Like they talk about the spirits world, the ceiling is falling, which it's not. It's all stabilization, but it's like the way that everyone's talking about it, it's an interesting choice to dive headfirst into it with a very well-known non-alcoholics. Like, why would you get involved?
It reminds me, I worked for Jesse as well. We worked for St. Michel Wine Estates. And at that time, they were owned by Philip Morris. And as we're talking about this, I just keep thinking about how Philip Morris, which is they own U.S. Tobacco, they own Marlboro, I mean, all the cigarettes,
Yeah.
right? And then all of a sudden they got into Juul because they were like, which ended up having a lot of challenges and a major problem, but for kind of the same reason, right? They were like, okay, we have to diversify. People aren't smoking cigarettes. We have to do other things. So they started doing other things, but it didn't necessarily have the most positive results because of children getting a hold of these products because, so I don't know, it just making me think about all that. I never even heard about this until right now. And I'm just thinking like, oh gosh, I thought we were evil monsters that kill people with our alcohol. And now the big billionaires are going to try and get into our pocket.
Yeah, Surgeon General says it causes cancer, but let's dive right into it with our orange juice. I don't know.
And let's mix it with, Hawaiian punch causes cancer too, so might as well throw them together, right?
Yeah, little red food coloring.
Yeah, a little yellow and red.
Oh gosh.
It's also one of these things where these companies are producing the stuff you're not supposed to eat. The processed foods you're not supposed to eat.
You're right.
But that's the thing. That's why they're like, look over here,
Yeah.
because we're not doing that. Look over here. We're launching booze.
But as someone who went through breast cancer this past year, I interviewed my oncologist, and when that announcement came out, I was just furious because I went through radiation, I went through my oncologist and my surgeon, and not a single one of them talked to me about my alcohol use. And in fact, I have a brochure where it was ranked number 12. And the media, all they want to do is blame alcohol. And I watched it the last fall through January. They maybe bring up dense breast tissue once or twice, but it lands on alcohol. And I'm furious.
It's too easy. That's just too easy. Like, what,
Like, we're the scapegoat now.
Yeah. And so I asked my oncologist, what's your opinion on this? And she's just basically like, look, breast cancer, I don't associate with drinking. That's more like, throat cancer, mouth cancer, tongue, whatever kind of things. There's so many other factors with breast cancer. Alcohol isn't like, anyway, don't get me started. I'll stop. But I was fired up on that podcast. So that's just so frustrating.
Rightfully so. Rightfully so.
Yeah. Is there any other? Oh, I wanted to swing back to Kate. You guys use Reyes, right? In certain markets. Are you using them in California?
We do not. We're actually with RNDC.
You are? Okay.
Yeah. So we're watching this, and I'm based in California, so it's like very noisy here. We're watching it very eagerly to see what it's going to look like and how that changes, because obviously RNDC they're a partner in 30 states, right? But in California, they're a major player, and that's two huge sources of revenue that are leaving in the next 2 months. And already there's been some changes. It'll be very interesting to watch, but a lot of it just came down to margin, right? Like that's a lot of what it came down to. And so it's not necessarily, I'm going to speak out of school, but like, I don't know that I wasn't in any of those rooms, but I wonder if it's really about Reyes and their ability to distribute, or the margins, or what it is, or what those agreements are. I'm literally just dying to see what happens in the next few months, like what it is that they offered, or what they're bringing to the table to help these two very major conglomerates brands, what they're going to do for them in California. It'll be so interesting to watch.
Do you think they have more salespeople? Because a lot of times that's a defining factor for a lot of companies. More feet on the street.
Geographically more streamlined. So in New York, Manhattan Beer has a division. It's Manhattan Beer, right? That has Blueprint. Yeah, I think so. And they've had a spirits division for a long time. Like, there are quite a few spirits beer distributors in New York that have been selling booze, but a lot of times it's like well alcohol and things like that. But they've been, in the space for quite a while.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's really nice about the way that they run is their territories are like geography based rather than relationship based. And so someone will have the Upper East Side from, 96 to and that's their territory. And so the account visits are definitely more streamlined. That's the positive spin on it. I think a lot of companies are thinking that the grass is greener because they're not getting the attention from Southern Breakthrough and RNDC the way that they used to. Blatantly, they're telling them, like, we're too busy to sell your stuff. So everybody's kind of looking at the grass on the other side. I guess you're right, Kate. Is that the question? Is the grass greener? We will have to see, right?
I think the best place to try it is California, though. So my thing with New York, and we actually use some beer distributors, including in New York. The challenge in New York is your beer guys are selling in one particular store, and liquor is sold in a different type of store. So that is not as streamlined as it should be, and those are challenges. In California, like I said, you can sell booze wherever you want to.
Right.
So there is an ability to get distribution maybe in places that the RNDC guys weren't going into because their book, their portfolio didn't indicate going into XYZ convenience store or gas station or whatever it might be. Not saying that any of those brands want to be in those places either necessarily, but I think it'll be really interesting with Reyes because you can sell everything together in markets where beer is separate than spirits. I think that's where it's a little bit stickier. But it'll be really interesting to watch. Yeah. And here's the thing. I live in California. I see Tito's and I see Jack Daniel's everywhere I go. So I'm curious where more distribution is, but maybe it's bigger and more visible through them. It'll be really interesting. I mean, I think they've got a great footprint here already. So it'll be really interesting to watch for sure.
Yeah, I've always been, and it's crazy because I've never worked in the beer industry, but it's an industry that I've always looked up to and described, throughout my 20 years in wine. And the reason is like having a family-owned restaurant as a young adult, my mom running it, I remember the beer distributor, coming in all the time, right? So I think the difference, and I used to, when I was in sales, be like, why aren't we like the beer distributors? Why don't we do this like the beer distributors? Because the way the beer distributor, such a simple thing, is they would have the service person come and make sure you pay your check, make sure you pay your bills, that the beers aren't expired. They switch them out if they're expired. They make sure that your coolers are full. Like they are on it day to day. And then depending on the size of your account, we had a small family owned restaurant. The actual salesperson would come like once a month, and it was a big deal when they would come, and they would come in with like value add, like here's a couple new products, do you want to do a radio advertisement? It costs this much, but we're going to promote it. And they bring stuff to you. And I feel like wine and spirits distribution just kind of missed that. And beer's built, if you think of any promotions, whatever, it was the beer companies, point of sale, you walk in, they give you everything, from the neon lights to this. And so my experience working with Tito's, at Southern, I never worked directly with Brown-Forman because he's always been aligned with RNDC, but Tito's is a huge brand. You see it everywhere, but according to them, not everywhere. And they're looking for all those independents, the stuff like, and in California, I get it. Like if it's not a chain account, nobody wants to deal with it because all the business and all the volume come from the chains. And where the beer distributors are, like Caitlin, you mentioned, they are everywhere. If you have a beer, wine, spirit license, you're going to have a beer rep that's in there every day. And I think with Tito's, that's kind of what they were looking for, and like going back to activations. When was the last time you saw like a spirits, like a promo or anything like that? And so I'm feeling like they're seeing the opportunity. And yes, I think in markets where there's separate beer and spirits, like they're going to have to like really perfect that. But if they stick to the foundational things that the beer industry has done and make little tweaks, I think it could really put up a disruption within the industry that everybody's kind of been waiting for.
Well, and to be honest, I've been really kind of sitting and watching, waiting for some news to start popping up about laws and regulations changing in New York because of the RTD, non-alc, functional beverages, things like that, where they can't put that that non-alc gin or booze-free gin on the same shelf, right? Or and now we need more distributors. Let's look at the beer companies. And to your point, Kate, I'm very curious because I feel like there's certain things about New York, like very old school. You're not making us a chain market. We all know that story. But to change the liquor license in itself, I think could be potentially something interesting because the state could tax more depending on maybe, implement additional taxes or make some additional money. But I mean, yeah, I had a friend that lives in Jersey that was talking about working for I think it was the Little Saint, and she was like, "You're gonna have to show me the liquor stores to go to," and I'm like, "You're not going to liquor stores with that," and she's like, "What?"
Yeah.
I said,
So yeah, it's so
you're gonna be going
restricted.
to
Yeah.
bodegas and grocery stores," and she was like, "What?" She's from the wine and spirits worlds,
Yeah.
and I think that in order as consumer demand continues to rise for RTDs and functional beverages, maybe not cannabis, but other functional NAs and things. I don't know. I'm curious to see if New York kind of makes some changes, the SLA makes some changes to say, okay, wait, hold on. We're missing money here that we could get, right?
Yeah. And I think there's just such opportunity. Like right now, if you look at the non-alcoholic landscape of distribution and also the THC landscape, it's so fragmented. I would say I get like at least a couple questions every week from producers trying to find distribution in one state or another and just hitting walls. And a lot of THC companies that I've talked with have now gone to self distribution because they're like, look, if we can't get in with like a good beer distributors seem to be like the best path for a lot of these companies in the states where that's legal. But trying to work with either traditional wine and spirits distributors often is a challenge, or they're not yet quite ready to go into that space. And all of these sorts of challenges of fragmentation in the marketplace are just creating tremendous inefficiency. And so I think that either the laws are going to have to change or distributor practices are going to have to change. Like something's going to give here. And these products are becoming so popular, and it's such a huge economic opportunity that I think the companies who get on this quickly are the ones who are going to reap the benefit.
Yeah, I think I could see changes happening again because there's money to be captured, there's taxes to be captured, and it's not going to hurt independent retailers in states like New York. It would help them.
For sure.
And New York is all about supporting independent retailers, and there's other states that function similar to us as well. But sure, to help those indie retailers. They're the ones that are gonna petition and say, we're losing business. People are drinking less and they want them on alc. Let me sell it in my liquor store. Then, it's gonna be interesting the next 5 years, I'll tell you that.
To say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Does anybody remember Treasury moving to a beer distributor 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Just remember them moving a lot regularly.
Yeah.
I don't know whatever came of that. I feel like that was the first big move that I remember hearing about, and that was in California, I think.
Well, and then Sazerac. I mean, Sazerac
And
moved
then
away
now
from all
Sazerac.
traditional distribution in the last few years, and
Yeah.
I don't really know a few people that work for Sazerac, and I don't hear any negative. I have not heard of seeing anything negative. Oh, and they did that nationally.
Yeah, that was huge.
Big move. It's a big move. Yeah.
So is there any other newsworthy topic you guys can think of that you want to bring up before I just jump? I'll just show you a couple slides on brands. It's nothing.
How did we do with your slides? Did we get there? we stopped you on slide 2 or 3 already.
No. It's there's literally just 4 slides.
Okay, good.
And it's just brand stuff now. And I got tired of looking at that sheet instead of your faces. So I was like, I would rather look at your faces. So I stopped sharing. Do you want to jump into brands and see what we can dig into? Okay. So I have a subscription to Circana through FinTech, and their data is through March 2nd. And the chart we're looking at right now is 52 weeks ending March 2nd. And I know it's an eye chart, but once I show you what it is, your eyes will refocus. And so this is food, drug, mass, merchandisers, Walmart, Club, Dollar, military, and e-commerce data. And so to your point about Tito's, Kate, being everywhere. So this CWD, so the first one is sales. This is dollars lost or gained. This is the percentage change. And then this right here is your percentage of sales in the highest volume stores. So in other words, Tito's is in 92.95% of those big volume stores. So in this particular of the spirits industry, it just looks in the spirits industry within food, drug, mass. So to your point, Caitlin, on the independents, they're not here, right? So maybe Tito's is wanting to get more into the independents because you're not going to gain a whole lot here. But I think what's interesting about this is it shows where the opportunities are. So if you look at Crown, obviously they had that blackberry flavor this year. They're at almost 92% of the stores. But then you look at High Noon, these top 10 or 15, they're not going to get much more distribution in this channel. But what's interesting is you get down to Don Julio, which is probably 12, and Cutwater, they're in about 80%. You go down here to the next level and you're in your 80s and your 70s. So there's still growth opportunities for some of these brands. You look at BuzzBalls, they're only in 70% of the high volume stores. That's a lot of growth for a brand that just gained $20 million in sales. That's not small. Right? And so if you look at the next chart, I sorted it by dollars growth or dollars sales versus last year. So in other words, High Noon had $37 million in sales over last year. Again, they're in 92% of the stores. So what's their strategy? Is it going to just continue to blow it out? I mean, they're not going to really get more distribution here. Are they going to have to come up with new flavors? You know, I'm not seeing them slow down anytime soon, but I'm just saying it's kind of an indicator of when does a brand mature. Tito's finally did, right? You know, Cutwater is in 82%. You've got BuzzBall 70, Don Julio 77. So there's a lot of interesting metrics in here to look at, and some interesting new brands. So have you guys heard of this Grand Malo? Sold almost $2.5 million. It's a YouTuber, and it's a tamarind flavored tequila.
No kidding.
And then there's this
I
Minute
did
Maid.
hear about it.
This is like, you know, in volume, brand ranks 166, but yet it's in the top 15. Sold over $7.5 million. That's the name. Then I'm wondering about distribution. It's not even in 20% of the stores.
Holy cow. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's just some really interesting things happening. You know, Erica, kind of like from your researcher point of view and being a writer, it's like, what are they doing? You know, what is happening behind the scenes that we don't know? Is it an investment? Is it Shark Tank? You know, is it are they researching exactly what to do before they do it? You know,
How are they gaining volume? That's
like
the
how are they
question?
winning at this game? Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of the brands that I see here. Like I'm just looking down at like Vibe Twisted Sips, and for example, like that's a Gallo brand. So they look at their growth. Their growth is like massive over the prior year. It looks like their entire sales for last year was the same as this is like so small I can't even see it, but anyway, I
Sorry.
was looking at this earlier, and like the entire sales last year were the same as like the first 3 months or the first 2 months of this year. So I think like, you know, a lot of these brands that are really up at the high end, they already have, in terms of gains, already have really impressive sales teams around them, you know, established distribution, you know, Vibe being part of Gallo, right? So like I
At
think the
44%.
brands that we see really, you know, getting a ton of gains, irregardless of like what channel they're in, it's because the infrastructure is there. And I think that's why you see, you know, the Minute Maids and those sorts of like more familiar brands doing partnerships with, you know, big alcohol companies and working with top distributors, because I think the biggest challenge for any type of alcohol brand getting into wide distribution channels right now and gaining traction is that brand visibility. Like these brands, like if they're well known, that really helps them, you know, get ahead in the game there. And if they're then partnering with established distributors and or, you know, established like, you know, multinationals or major sort of top 25 drinks companies, then you see them gain that traction really quickly, and that's like really where you can make an impact. There are other companies on here. Like I think from my perspective, the most impressive one on here is Carbliss, which is about number 6 or so there. Yeah, so Carbliss is fascinating to me because
21%.
yeah, and so
That's
What
Carbliss
is
is,
it?
so this is fascinating to me. It's essentially like a very low calorie, like a kind of like keto friendly, very low sugar grams spiked seltzer. And what's interesting to me about this is their trajectory has just been mind blowing, and it's a completely regional brand. You can't even get it outside of like 5 states. So the founder, who's, I'm trying to remember, I just interviewed him, Adam Craner. So he is the founder and president of this, and they started in the Midwest, and they had this very narrow and deep market expansion strategy. And they used that essentially, like they flooded the market in a couple key states. They didn't even think about national distribution. They were approached many times for national distribution, and they have said like, no thanks. So they have really gone this deep strategy and are just now outselling competitors in the space because, you know, these products, they deliver on flavor, they're well priced, they're kind of fitting that gap in the spirits based RTDs of like very, very low sugar grams, like even lower than a lot of the existing products out there. And they're kind of just the, you know, lemon, black raspberry, cranberry, but it's like a brand that had a very specific strategy and went out and executed very effectively, completely independently owned 5-year-old startup. And to see that kind of traction in, when you look at the other top of the chart and all of those other brands are owned by you know, major drinks companies, is really, I think, one of the most fascinating stories. And I have that coming up in 2 or 3 weeks on the Business of Drinks podcast.
That's so interesting. I think the other one that I find similar in terms of just what you were talking about is Surfside, which I had never even heard of until I was in Pennsylvania. And it's like Jersey, Pennsylvania. So it's all over all the Pennsylvania, their liquor stores, like huge displays. And if you live in like Jersey Shore, that whole area, that's what you drink. Like they just were really smart about it. It's like it hasn't made it over here yet, I don't believe. And you look at how well they're doing, and they have so much more ground to cover still, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we did an interesting podcast episode with the founder there, and you know, that Clem Papas is his name. And that one was so fascinating to me because what they did is they were the first sort of hard lemonade, or one of the early ones that was just like, we're vodka and lemonade, no sparkling, you know, no bubbles there, just like very easy to drink. And then they have the hard iced teas. but their difference was to say like, hey, we're not a malt-based product, we're like a vodka-based product. And one of the very first ones to say, we're not doing a sparkling product, it's a totally flat product. So that was just, their traction has been equally impressive over the past couple of years, and like, again, totally independently owned.
Yeah, very interesting.
I think we talked about it last time. It's that idea of picking some states and just really digging in and just blowing it up and then rolling out to other states. And, we talk to brands every day, new brands, and we suggest it. And we're like, look, you're going to do what you're going to do for your business strategy. But this is what we see as success. Pick a few secondary states too, and just drive it in and just blow it up. And then you have proof of concept, and then you can roll it out to other states. But they always just want to be in New York and Florida. And, we're like, we can help you. Definitely. But this is how we see real success go, is when brands do something like what you guys are talking about right now with these two brands.
I mean, New York and Florida equals lots of money and a lot of people you need feet on the street. Like those are not, you've got to have money and feet, and if they're not, I think New York's probably one of the hardest markets, honestly. I mean, the independence of it all, the breadth of it all, the number of stores and bars and restaurants. I mean, it's exhausting when you think about it.
I think there's like that localized piece of it, right? Is like the brand loyalty. And, I feel like it's like very old school, like actually building the brand, starting in your local community. So I think more so than, big market versus small market is really like focus on where is the product created from and then building it out. And that kind of sounds like what Carbliss did, like being in the Midwest and then just starting to expand, because once people love localized. I mean, if it's something that they can relate to. And I think that that's what these brands can do to compete against some of these bigger ones, is going on that local factor. But I mean, it's great to see. And it looks like they're just tapping the surface on their growth.
Smart. I mean, you see it like back in the days. I went to UCLA when Red Bull was coming on the market, right? And the way Red Bull did things, they just were like, our target audience is just going to be college kids. And they just went hard. They hired brand people just on college campuses. You know what I mean? It's like when you do stuff and you're just so specific. I mean, the way that just blew up, it's kind of the same model. Just go all in on a particular market or, a particular audience, and huge. I mean, we couldn't go on a trip in college without there being cases of Red Bull in every bus and in front of every hotel room. Like it was just nonstop, typing like 1,000,000 miles a minute because it was just everywhere.
Sorry, ladies. I literally spilled my entire cup of tea everywhere. So I had to quickly clean, but I was listening and loved all the dialogue. Apologies for disappearing. I didn't have to go to the bathroom or anything. You want to switch over to year to date and see the differences? I didn't find it to be all that different, just to be honest, slightly, but you still got the high noons, the buzz balls on the rocks. You don't see the brands that we were just talking about as much as we did before. So it'll be interesting to see where they end up, this year. But this is slightly depressing to look at, right? And speaking about the tariffs and Crown Royal, my brother-in-law came home the other day, and I said, "How dare you? You can't have Crown in this house." Because you grow up in the industry, and Diageo's always the double-headed monster and blah 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 blah. And he's like, "But seriously, they're offering it $10 off." And so what I'm wondering what they're doing, and I've kind of been reading that a little bit, is that they're hedging their bets and bringing in a bunch of volume, and then they're ended up paying that on the storage end. But they're trying to, I wouldn't call it panty load so much, but they're trying to bring in as much as they can to not pay the tariff. is my
Well, I'm
guess.
sure the suppliers
Good call.
that, and trying to get their last biggest, orders
Yeah.
from the distributors, before any of the potential tariffs hit. But I think what's interesting is with Canada, because when, they started talking about the tariffs, like the first thought for North America was like Mexico and tequila and being such a huge category. But like, it's very interesting hearing that there's so much tension between, in regards to the Canadian and the US relationship when it comes to alcohol. Like the Canadians are pissed. Like they've already taking, and they, when we think of liquor, yeah, they've got Crown Royal, so maybe they're not like a huge bourbon importer, but when it comes to premium wine, they're the biggest for American wineries. So this directly will impact, a lot of our American wineries. So,
Absolutely.
and I feel like there's a lot of like, we have Canadian friends that come to Miami, every multiple times a year, and they're all like, we're not coming back, like they're taking it very personally. And I'm just curious to see how that evolves, right? I mean, it's one thing if Canada was just like a small piece of the pie for the American wine industry, but it's a huge piece of it.
But it's a huge piece of their economy, right? So remember, Canada is all provincial. All that money is going into their government's hands. When you're talking about the OLCB being the single biggest buyer of liquor in the world, and how much money and how much they mark up our products there, how are they going to make up the difference in their revenue loss? Those are jobs in Canada. Those are big jobs in Canada, and taking American spirits off their shelves. I understand the feeling behind it and wanting to do something big and, make a point. Our CEO has been on about 1 million shows talking about this, but I'm concerned about friends who, like you think about in Canada, that's a huge revenue loss. People are going to lose jobs over this. It's not a small amount of money. It's a, multi-billion-dollar industry there, and it's all revenue for the government. So it's how long can they sustain this is what's going to be interesting. It's a real standoff. It could be
The
dangerous for them.
consumer, yeah, but will the consumer demand shift, right? Will they be drinking more French and Italian wines, and if there's a significant difference? I mean, it's like you're going to drink what's available and what costs less. Like I always think about, my husband's from South Africa, so we go every year, and you can only get South African wine everywhere. And it's like, great, they
Right.
make all good wines. Like, I don't want South African wine, but so I drink beer, but if you want like an imported wine, you're paying like ridiculous amount of money. So you're not going to, and it's, it has an impact on, it could change consumer behavior. I'm hoping that this is just a lot of disruption and noise, and then we get to a good agreement that everybody agrees on, and it's not so disruptive. But it's interesting how it's become it's become so personal.
I just talked to, I was texting with a friend who is French. She lived here for a little while on a work visa, working in the wine industry many moons ago. And we've stayed friends and we've stayed in touch. She moved from Paris to Bordeaux, and she was sending me copies of her invoice that she was trying to order because she orders American wine because she's like, I live in Bordeaux. Of course I drink Bordeaux. I'm French, but I want my American wine because she lived here for a year and a half and she loves it. She said, all my wines have gone up 20%. Like
Already. Yeah.
just happens. So, and she was like talking to the, her wine purveyor, and she's like, oh my God, these prices are so high. And he's like, yeah, we had to take an increase.
And get ready because it's going to get worse.
So she's like, yeah, so I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to drink my American wine, but it's 20% is a lot of money when I'm buying a few cases. And, she's a consumer. She's not in the industry anymore. Yeah, they're already taking increases apparently. So scary.
Well, Canada has a new prime minister too, so we'll see what that shift does for them and the
yeah, it'll be very interesting. And I think additionally, with all these imports, right? Like French, Italian, New Zealand, huge imports into the US. And if those all go up like 200, who's going to, spend money on those wines? Like, I think it's sad to say, but I think this is a huge opportunity for the American wineries to really take advantage and
Yes,
put
but
out there, like, you know, proud to be American, sorry you can't get your French and Italian wine, but try this instead. And it could be a big opportunity to kind of
Interesting take.
revive the American wine industry.
yes, but there has been a big challenge, which is that, when wine just pre-pandemic kind of wine started to go down and down and down. So wineries were literally not purchasing grapes or ripping up vines, and like it was an overproduction. So wine production and plantings has pulled back. So there's not necessarily enough product available to fulfill to I don't know. I would love to see statistics on that. Like, let's say we could never have European wine again. Would we have enough wine
Yeah.
produced in this country at this time to cover the wine consumption? Or is then the American wines are going to go up in price because supply and demand? And, because it's definitely much less production than it used to be. I mean,
Well, you bring up such a good point, because I was reading this recent article that because of the wine industry going down, and there was an overproduction of
very much.
juice, a lot, right? But however, what the American wineries import of juice from like Argentina and Chile, they were importing these over the surplus that they had because it costs so much less. And obviously the tariffs will change, but if that kind of juice that they can get from Argentina and Chile is not so impacted from the tariffs, we're just going to be drinking American wine that's going to be minimal percent American, but with, South American juice, which is insane, right? Like, why are we wasting, but yet buying because it costs less?
I think any potential disruption for just wine in general, whether it's American wine or other types of wine from other countries, is going to be a huge problem, just because of in the United States, the leaky bucket problem for wine, which is wine is bringing new consumers to the category every year, but losing more than those that were brought new, right? So wine is losing consumers in this category. And if you're not able to find the wine you're used to drinking or what you like, you're probably going to turn off to, possibly another wine product. But the competition is so fierce from RTDs and other parts of this, other types of products, whether they're, spirits products or, beer products, malt-based, liquors, or THC, adaptogen, whatever it is. The competition is so fierce that I think we risk the real opportunity of losing these wine consumers, perhaps more so than other parts of the industry. So like, I see the challenges with tariffs like really being bad for wine overall, because we're just already facing declining consumption numbers among drinkers in the United States. So I think it's really going to be a challenge moving forward if this really does last.
Yeah, I think the wine industry definitely needs a lot of help, specifically the American wine industry. But, you bring up a great point, is RTDs. A wine can be an RTD, right? Like, why aren't there wine seltzers? Like, I don't want a malt seltzer and I
Right.
don't want a vodka seltzer,
Well,
but
where are
a
they in the
nice,
CBD THC space?
right. Or, wine with some sparkling water. That's what I usually do. And in South Africa, everybody puts ice in their white wine. So it's not that complicated. I think wine just needs to get out of its way and come out the way to be more convenient, more approachable.
Totally.
You
I
see a
mean,
bottle, you're like,
yeah,
oh, I don't have glassware. I don't have this,
right.
and like I said, they can learn a lot from beer. Another project I'm working on is comparing wine to the milk industry, right? And when milk, I mean, continues to have decline, but what they did was they started to diversify and making cheese and getting more into string cheese and this and this. Wine is an agricultural product. So let's come up with different ways that wine can be enjoyed and help,
Yeah,
move it.
I completely agree with that. I think that one of the biggest challenges I see among producers, and I was just giving a keynote presentation at a trade industry wine trade conference in California last week, and one of the questions I kept getting over and over, because I'm talking about RTDs and the popularity of single serve formats as being something that younger consumers expect. People just want a single serve format because, they're not necessarily going to pick up a $30 bottle of wine that they have no idea if they're going to like what's in that bottle. So, I talk about single serve formats, whether they're small bottles or cans or what have you. I don't care what they are, Tetra Paks, doesn't matter. The point is it's a single serve format that gets you to try the product, to realize, do I like this product? Do I want to buy it again? And am I willing to spend more for that larger format? But, question after question that I would get was around, I'm a wine producer. I am very proud of what goes into the bottle, and I am unwilling to put it in cans. I'm not willing to do that. And I'm like, look, some producers are not going to be willing to do that. But if you look at who is moving the market, the top 15 wine companies, all of their innovation products in wine are either low alc wines that maybe are also blended with other ingredients, or they're RTDs, like that Vibe twisted wine product that we were just talking about from Gallo that's seen so much growth. Brands, I think, have, and it's not always just brands. It's like people are very invested in the traditional appeal of these artisanal products. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I think, people should be proud of what they're making, but they also, if they want to increase their share of dollar, then they do need to provide ways for younger consumers, especially, to try their products in a single serve format, because the reality is people aren't looking for 750 mLs, and they're not willing to spend money on those that size if they don't know if they're going to like it. So if there hasn't been trial in the market, or you're not at the wine store helping them taste it, or it's not on a glass list at a restaurant, it's very hard to convince many consumers to take a risk on buying a 750 ml.
And there's so many options. I'm sorry, wine is probably one of the most intimidating. If you're not a person with any kind of wine background, it's such an intimidating thing to buy. And if you go, like, I live near this Whole Foods, and you look at, like, even in like this, if you wanted to go white wine, there's 30, 40 varietals. Like, it's like, if you don't know wine, where do you start? But the ones that have a small, yeah, right. I mean, I grew up in Sonoma County, so I have a little more like knowledge, but right. But like it's really confusing for people. And I honestly think that sometimes I think there's just lack of education. People just are like, it's too much. Beer seems more straightforward to people sometimes, right? It's just, never mind, but I think you're so right. If you had those smaller splits or something right above it, or the cans, and who's the company? It's the Oregon-based winery that has all the cans. They do everything from
Underwood.
Yeah.
Underwood. Like, and I've tried almost all of their cans, because I think that's a fun way to try their different wines and their sparklings and all that. And I think it's brilliant. And it's not like it's not cheap, right? Still, like, you're still like, okay, this is still quality, but it's a great way to try all of everything that they've got to offer.
Yeah, I think that it's important to have both, though, because like me, I'm a wine girl, and when I go to a shop, I want to get a funky white Italian varietal, and I want a beautiful bottle of wine, and
you're comfortable with it.
And I'm not drinking wine in a can necessarily. Like
with a straw.
Glass.
Old school. I love my wine. I think there's room for both, and I think that definitely it is important to have those alternate options, especially for the newer generation. But I mean, winemakers are very often like a chef, right? And so you don't want to take the chef and throw it in McDonald's, right?
For marketing.
Like, totally. But like there is still a time and a place, and there are still consumers that are older generations or just more refined palates or whatever that want a nice bottle of wine and you know, I don't know.
Erica, you had the gentleman from Stella Rosa on,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought that was really interesting because they do something like 3,000 tastings a year.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
what
Stella Rosa's a really interesting brand because they over-index both for multicultural consumers and for younger generations. So if you're not familiar with them, they're like a semi-sparkling, semi-sweet, like 5% Moscato-based wines that have natural flavors. It's not actually even natural flavors added to them; it's natural fruit distillates. And in the episode, the Business of Drinks episode, we talk about like the process of making those distillates, and this is actually a very high quality product that sells for around $15. If you hear like the labor intensiveness that goes into it, it's pretty surprising. It's really an amazing product. And, I use them often as an example of a company that brings more people to wine than almost any other wine company, because they're offering these products that are an easy on-ramp. Like one of the challenges
It's a gateway wine.
It's a total gateway wine. One of the challenges with wine is that like you look at every other CPG category, right? Any other drinks category, and it says what it is on the label. It says it's strawberry dragon fruit, or it says that it's, margarita flavor. That like everyone knows what that is, but you get to wine and people don't know what it is. They just don't know what it is.
Great.
And so, yeah, exactly.
Or all the things they're putting in there too.
Yeah. So you see like a Stella Rosa, black cherry, and you're like, oh, black cherry, this is what it will taste like. And you're, then willing to spend that $15 because you have a pretty good idea of what's going to be in that 750 ml. And they've also moved into, non-alc and single serve formats and all of that. But I think, any of these brands that are, looking to bring new people to wine, they do need to be open to various formats, because I think that's really the challenge. Yes, there's always going to be connoisseur level, products available in 750 mLs, but it's just a harder sell for people who aren't as familiar with the category.
But I also thought there's a couple of things he mentioned that was interesting, and not every portfolio can do that because they have the range, but how they work with their distributor networks to teach them to, as you say, gateway brand, but they try to, as they age through life, they're trying to teach them about these other varietals and to get them to try them and see if they like them and progress through the other brands that they own. And I thought that was really fascinating. But I also thought it was interesting that when it comes to flavors, they go to beaches in Italy and they look at what kids are drinking on the beach. Not kids, but younger adults. Like, that's how they came up with that hot mango or that spicy mango flavor or something like that.
Spicy
chili. That was just like, are you serious? That is
right.
That's
he
wild.
saw people drinking spicy margaritas on the beach in Italy, and he was like, I feel like this is coming down the road. And then that new SKU for them, which they launched in 2023, was the #1 top selling product, new wine SKU in America. According to
That's
Nielsen.
wild.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
His hunch was right. But what that product also does is it capitalizes on how popular cocktails are. Because this is like a spicy pineapple wine is like not too far from a spicy, pineapple margarita, something that you see at, any of these sort of, casual restaurants, like the, kind of a Mexican chain restaurant. So it's like a very easy thing for people to understand. And I think that's kind of their brilliance, is like, I always say like, hey, it's like you start with one of these wines that's a Stella Rosa, a flavor that maybe you are totally familiar with, you're excited about. Maybe it's like a green apple flavor or whatever. And then but once you get people to say like, I am a wine drinker, I drink wine, you can move them along the journey, right? Because then where do you go from that? Maybe you go to a Vino Verde, and maybe you go to, a Sauvignon Blanc, or like one of these.
I did Rieslings.
Riesling's a perfect example. That's like a great gateway wine for a lot of people, because it has that sweetness and it's kind of familiar flavors. Like you got the apricots and apples and all those kind of flavors in there that people can like readily identify with and are not hard to like.
Mm-hmm. You're both right. It's really important to get that new consumer, right? And I know we drink wine coolers when I was a kid, and then White
Booze.
Zinfandel, Bartles and James wine coolers, and then we got into White Zinfandel, and then Riesling, and then got into wine. So I definitely agree that wine needs to be more innovative and do more things. I wasn't disagreeing with that at all, but I do still want to still see the fancy, funky varietals in the wine shops, and
Yeah, I do
there's-
too. for my own collection,
For sure.
I do too.
and Riebele is great because they have Stella Rosa, but then they have their boutique family owned wines, and so they can kind of capture all of it. So that they're a great company because of that, right? Because they get them young and they keep them as they
and guess what pays the bills for all the nice wines is
exactly
Stella,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Sure,
So
exactly.
I think wine companies, if they're really trying to grow and expand, I mean, unless you're these like generational wineries from Italy, because you do the math, you're like, there's no way they could even make money, based on their production. And that's fine wine. Like, you don't get into fine wine because you want to make a lot of money. It's usually because you're kind of generational and you've got into it. But if you want to do wine as a business, I think this is the time to be innovative. I mean, wine has been in can, right? But I think it was premature, right? Like, there were a lot of wineries that did in can and then they stopped because sometimes you've got to repeat things because the time just wasn't there. And I feel like the time is now. And a lot of wineries, for them to put stuff in a can is not a huge investment. And it's actually, number one, convenience, which is super important. Packaging, they can get super creative, right? Like you mentioned, poppy and whatever pops and exciting stuff. Flavor is huge, right? Like, there's no reason when you can't have like a sweet rosé and say tastes like strawberry liquid, I mean, those are all real things. And I think that could really attract the consumer. And then introduce the other wines, that you're more proud of. Like Jesse, you mentioned, it's like you take your consumers on a journey so that there's always something else for them. But why not, start it off? I mean, if you've got Minute Maid now, and if they're still in those little foil juice packs, I mean, that's.
I really have to look this up because you guys are blowing my mind with this. I did not hear about this.
Yeah, if you find that in I'd be like, oh, we're going out on the boat. Let me grab, box of that. But
throw it in the cooler with your kids in the boat and confuse Minute Maids. Like,
even when White Claw came out, I remember at parties we all had to be really careful when like those were out with the kids because they look very appealing. All those cans are, you have to be super careful with all that stuff for sure.
Yeah,
you're right. Anything that looks like a Capri Sun is definitely
you wonder why the kids have been like passed out for hours and they're not moving.
They're so tolerable.
So this is for sale, huh?
They're in there's
that. To me, that's too close to home for me personally, but
because they make the Minute Maid the focal point.
Wow.
If you pull up a bottle of Minute Maid or a carton of Minute Maid, you can see, and that's pretty interesting to me.
And it's like Tide Pods. Like, be careful.
Who owns Minute Maid? Do we know? Coca-Cola.
Well, there you go. See what I mean? Like, I just think because they do the bottles like that now, I know there's a difference, but it's very similar.
They probably got away with it by putting it in a wine bottle. That's probably when they're saying that it's like you would know because it's in a wine bottle. But interesting.
No comment.
I've seen this too. Lime margarita.
If you're a Minute Maid house and you've got those bottles in your refrigerator and you're hosting a party and then those are also out on the counter, could be confusing for a child,
Yeah.
Or an adult that's not paying attention and it's like, juice, cool,
I'm not seeing too much of the cans.
Can I ask a touchy subject? I did read yesterday about aluminum, that there's going to be tariffs on aluminum. So if that happens, what is that going to do to all this RTD and beer and alternate formats and things like that? I mean, do you guys think that I think Tetra Paks are definitely should be hotter than they are. I think that potentially they're maybe better for the earth, but curious on your guys' opinion. I was like, oh, well, aluminum, that's all of our new hot categories,
It
right?
sure is. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's,
this
I mean,
is
it's
high
gonna,
alcohol too.
Yeah, and
it really,
for beer, I
isn't
mean,
it?
that's going to be a huge impact.
Yeah, this is
Beer,
13.9%.
You're used to seeing like 5% on any of these kind of spiked RTDs. That's really high.
But
But
they're
I think
using
they're
in
putting wine. Okay, they have wine and
Yeah.
what? Like, is
That
there
one's higher than, I guess it's a wine cocktail. So, okay, but that's almost even a little higher than most. I don't know.
most wine? Yeah.
Definitely higher
Yeah.
than the seltzers. So I think like the seltzer
Yeah,
market is
seltzers are like
kind of like
5.
leveling out a little bit, and where the growth opportunity is in the higher alcohol categories right now. Because I think it's like I think there's I mean, I would guess that their idea was like, okay, we're starting to see the like seltzer, these lower alcohol products kind of like level out from a growth perspective. So like that market's saturated. Where's the opportunity? It's in the higher alc cocktails.
Yeah. If you scroll, like if you see there was like a regular Minute Maid can, like look at, if you scroll down a little bit, there's like the Minute Maid apple juice, and then look at those two cans, like you've got the Minute Maid apple juice and then the spiked. First of all, child, my 8-year-old, in his vocabulary, the term spiked means nothing.
Right.
They're not going to see this 21 plus over here.
And you can barely read it.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be very dangerous
Oof.
for a child.
Yeah, 13.9, that's very different than having a sip of your dad's beer.
Yeah, why did they think they needed to do that? Because grocery stores in some states you need to be a lot lower than that. I think it's under 8% or under 6.
That's a good call, actually, too. You're right. It's not going to be able to be sold everywhere.
They didn't know what they were doing,
Well,
clearly.
maybe that's why. No, maybe they did that intentionally so that it wouldn't be in the grocery stores.
Maybe.
So it would only be in the liquor stores or whatever. So maybe that was the intent of it. So
Yeah, maybe they're not.
Except for California. They figure all the California kids are just smoking weed now anyways, I bet.
Yeah.
They have a vodka lemonade, 5%.
Well, they've got, yeah, and see, there's like they've got the lower alc too. I haven't seen this one. And this one is going on the, did you see it said smooth, no fizz?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's I think the 5% fizz market is saturated.
Nuts. Well, it'll be interesting. It's interesting that Minute Maid and Crystal Light are doing this much before the wine industry is doing it. They're kind of shooting themselves in the foot a little bit, They need to get ahead of it, like you guys said, for sure. Well, we're kind of at 2:00. Does anyone have a hard stop that they need to jump off?
I'm going to.
Okay.
I'm going to need to jump off.
I
Yeah,
need to
I'm
get on the
gonna hop
road
off
for a
here in a
minute.
second.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say if anybody had anything that they wanted to talk about trends or anything like that. If not, no biggie. I think we talked about a lot of really great topics and covered them all.
I think when we get back together, we're going to have a lot more, like, we'll have some insights on tariffs, right? Everything happening with the EU,
Yeah.
Canada, Mexico, because it'll be really interesting to see and how many times they go on and off too.
Yep.
Keeping us on our
Whiplash.
toes.
Gosh,
Yeah.
it's keeping me up at night. That's for sure. My poor clients don't know what to do. They're like, should we hire? Should we not hire? Should we hire? Should we not hire? Like they don't know what to do right now. It's so sad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we're busier than ever, like I said. So, people are still hiring, but I think we had somebody fly out for a final. Everything was great. Totally loved them. It was a whiskey too. Yep. They were on a hiring freeze. We can't hire. And we were like, you flew the guy out there. Everyone loves him.
That's a big expense to do
And
that.
that was an American whiskey, by the way. So definitely not sure what that was like about, but I think it's just the looming fear that's going on so that even American products, they're not sure what to do right now. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, all the marketing budgets of friends at almost every wine and spirits company is like, we are on hold until further notice.
yeah. And domestic brands are cutting, I mean, twice a week I'm hearing of mass layoffs, and it's domestic, not just international.
Yeah.
It's
like 6 months of layoffs, hasn't it?
Yeah.
it is twice, 2 times a week, if not more. It's minimum of a dozen people. It's huge companies that we're getting calls
LinkedIn,
about.
every time I open up LinkedIn, there's 3 or 4 people that got new jobs. So there are jobs, which is a good
There
thing.
are. And you guys, this is not for forever either.
It's not
Our
forever.
CEO did this op-ed for Spirits Business Fund. We were, at the end of the day, like if you look at the graphs and everything too, we just grew so much during COVID, right? And we could not continue that. We didn't give the guidance to investors if you're big companies about growth not being able to be sustainable at that level. We now have distributors who've been forced into buying so much product the last 2 years that it's all sitting on their, it's all sitting on their floors. And there's a little bit of, people nervous about there's just all these other factors. But the reality is like, we're stabilizing. People are still drinking. There's a lot that, like, yes, non-alc is growing and everything, but there's also, people are still drinking. Yeah. But it does, I think it's one of those pieces right now where it feels like, I always think about like Dumb and Dumber, like our pets' heads are falling off, like everything's happening all at once, I don't know if you guys, sorry.
Yeah.
Really mature way, our pets' heads are, but it's not all doom and gloom, and I think we just have to buckle up this year and let some stabilization. And yeah, we probably all overspent thinking we were going to continue to hit the, but we've just got to like buckle down, and get creative and,
Focus on the right accounts.
Right. And I think,
exactly.
Important to remember, last year's alcohol sales were about $113 billion, according to Nielsen. So like that is not going anywhere. And I've even had, it's not a small amount. And I've even had companies say like, oh, should we like throw in the towel on alc and like do non-alc, or how important is it to add non-alc? And that the value of the NA market is just a tiny fraction of the size of the alcohol market. It's just right now about $1 to $2 billion and forecast to go up to about $5 billion in, by 2028. So like, yes, it's growing, but that's not going to take over or take the share away from dollars any market way in the foreseeable future. $113 billion is a huge chunk that is probably a fairly resilient number.
We're probably signing 3 new clients a week, like literally signing up. That means they're calling us, they need to hire, they need our help, and we're signing them. And it's 3 a week at a minimum. I mean, it's nonstop.
Innovation.
So.
Yeah, the innovation.
Innovative ways, fractional sales.
Innovation versus
we'll take it.
The bigger companies.
But that's the way to do it. And I mean, probably our next conversation should be just how does distribution change? Because all of these companies that are starting, they're all hungry enough. They could all go sell on their own, but they're all hamstrung by a pretty antiquated 3 and 4 tier system and time. So
yeah,
I tell you, I think we could all sell the heck out of it without.
Yeah, I'm going to send you the brand. I'll send you guys the brand cultivator program just so you could see it.
I'd love to see it.
Seen it because it's on fire and that it's helping. And we're getting big brands calling us for it now as added layer sales, feet on the street. So it's not just like scrappy startups. It's big brands that we all know are like, yeah, we'll take some fractional sales, some brand cultivators for an add-on to our primary market or for secondary market.
Caitlin, hit me up, please. I'm super interested in this.
Yeah, it's working well. So, well, thanks, ladies.
Yes.
Definitely always great to see all of you guys. I'm glad you're all keeping your chin above water. Who's going to BCB? Anybody? No? No, I'll be flying solo there. Jesse, you're not going to come?
I'm indecisive.
All right, we'll talk about it.
I think I'm going to have...
No, but maybe she can be talked into it.
2026, I will come out of my cave with Grogu. Me and Grogu over here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah,
thanks for getting us together.
It's good chatting with all of you. We'll stay connected. And Caitlin, I'd love to learn more about.
I know I've been meaning to email you and connect with you because we have to talk and like see how we can help each other as well.
Yeah,
so I'm always up for that. Jesse, we have to leave this on, right? Until we finish buffering.
Yeah, I'm going to say goodbye and I'm going to wave my thing and I will stop recording.
Okay.
Produced by Fedora J Productions.